frustration in leadership comes from contracts that no one knew they signed. Dun, 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 dun. Intriguing. I'm excited. Every day, leaders make silent agreements in their minds, expectations about how people should behave, how fast things should move, how standards should be met, but they never say them out loud. Then when those invisible contracts get broken, we call it miscommunication or a lack of follow through on the other person's behalf or incompetence. But it's none of those things, or very often those aren't the issues.
That's right.
It's an expectation gap. And it's one of the most common causes of tension on any team.
I experienced this firsthand. So all the fingers are pointing back at me. And what is
Raise
wild,
your hands if you're guilty.
I know. Totally. What's wild is you don't even know that you're doing it because these are things that maybe seem obvious to us, or we feel like they're so clear in our mind that we've communicated them clearly. But really what happens in these cases is that we're handing people a test that they didn't even know that they were taking.
Yeah.
And then we're grading them as if they did know that they had taken it.
That's right.
So let me ask you this, Eric. How can we as leaders tell if we're dealing with maybe follow through issues or miscommunications, even incompetence, or if what's really happening is an expectations problem?
Well, I'll tell you this. After a variety of cycles through, marriage counseling, therapy, all kinds of stuff, trying to resolve tensions that arise in any relational context. I remember one therapist saying, one of the most common tensions in relationship has to do with unmet expectations, right? Well, it could be just you walking in the house and the way that your partner greets you. It could be the unmet expectations of how your kids cleaned up their bedroom. It could be the unmet expectations of how your boss is going to communicate to you via certain emails. But then the therapist took it one step further. Said, but the root of so many of these unmet expectations is actually uncommunicated expectations.
There it is.
We don't take time to actually share with the other party what we're hoping that we're going to experience them as. So I think for us, we can start by just saying, this shows up in patterns. If you keep seeing the same behavior in different people, it's probably not a people problem. It's more likely a clarity problem. And maybe you keep getting frustrated by the same types of things, people missing details, moving too slow, or what we think is too slow, asking questions you thought you'd already answered. And when those same frustrations are repeating, that's our cue to pause and reflect and ask a couple of questions. First, what expectations am I operating under? Right? Because whatever expectations I bring to the table, that's the test. That's the unspoken test, right? And secondly, and did I ever make those clear to my team? That's the uncommunicated expectations, of which we're all guilty. So just, all of our listeners know you're in good company today, because we mess this up. I mean, virtually in every relational context of life.
And let's be the most gracious here. Let's be the most generous that we can. And I just want to double click on what you said, but sometimes, maybe even oftentimes, we aren't clear that we're operating with a set of expectations.
That's right.
We don't even know that we were expecting one thing until we don't receive that thing.
Right. And then we're upset and frustrated.
So going back to that first question, what expectations am I operating under, is really like the foundational first step here.
That's right.
Because we all do it. We're operating. It's what we all have a sense of obviously's. We all sets of obviously's. Things that are so obvious to us that we think that they must clearly be obvious to everybody around us.
Of course, yeah.
And yet, when we don't make those obviously's clear to other people, we just end up stepping all over each other's obviously's without even knowing that it's happening. And this is the part that can really sting when we practice this self-awareness here, is that we realize that we're mad at people for breaking rules that they never knew existed.
That's right.
And we don't mean to be unclear. It's simply that we operate out of assumption instead of clarity more often than we'd like to admit, right? So we assume people know what done well means to us or what done well looks like on our team. We assume that they will handle it the way that we would handle it. We assume that silence means agreement. And I see this one with our leaders all the time. I'm like, no, agreement is agreement. Silence is not an agreement.
That's right.
But all of those assumptions make us feel like we've communicated when really we haven't.
That's right. That's right. There's the old adage, right? That when we assume, we make an ass out of you and me, right? That's just taking the spelling of assume and breaking it up into some fun little words. But that's what happens, right? We show up, we have internal assumptions very often that we're not aware of.
Yes.
And so we project those assumptions onto the people or the circumstances. And when those expectations, which that's what assumptions are, go unmet, it's triggering. It can hijack us. We start pinballing, as we've talked about many times. And so what I love about the direction of this conversation is what we're really saying is when we feel frustrated with how the people around us are operating, the first thing we need to do is to check ourselves.
That's right.
Like personal responsibility. If I'm upset, is it possible that I'm the reason I'm upset?
Gosh, dang it.
Right. Going back to either I'm not, paying attention to my own expectations or they've not been communicated clearly.
Right.
And there's, and not even that, I would take it a step further and to say, it's not even enough to communicate expectations. There has to be agreement around those expectations.
Yes.
If I say to my son, this is, what I want you to do, but I don't get his agreement, then I can't hold him or any team member accountable for an expectation that they didn't agree to.
That's right.
I often will say, okay, are we on the same page about this expectation? I want to know that you know what I mean, what I expect, and therefore, can you agree to that? And if they say yes, boom, now I can hold them accountable.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, let me throw this out. I think these assumptions that we're talking about, these, whether maybe these are the ones we're unaware of or the ones we've not communicated, but they create a sense of false alignment.
Yes.
People nod in meetings out of courtesy, not because they have clarity. Then we end up frustrated thinking, how did they miss that? How do they not understand? Why are they so slow? But underneath all that frustration, it's not an issue of incompetence. Sometimes it is, and that's a different conversation.
That's right.
But very often there is a communication or expectations gap. Mm-hmm. And that gap can then turn personal, right? Because when people don't meet our expectations, it can feel like a lack of respect or effort or care, especially when you're running a business or a team. Because their performance reflects on us as the leader. So we start thinking, are you trying to sabotage me? Are you trying to blow up my business? What's going on? But more often it's just a lack of information.
That's right. And as we have said multiple times on this podcast, and as you and I we both have lived experiences with this, we rarely assume the best in people when things like this happen.
That's right.
We start to backfill with stories of their incompetence or their lack of care or, fill in the blank. But that's just human nature, that we don't off the bat extend grace, courtesy, understanding. We start typically from a negativity bias.
That's right.
And that's what makes unclear expectations so dangerous, is that they erode trust quietly, when in reality, nobody's trying to drop the ball. It's just they didn't understand the assignment in the first place, right? Which then makes accountability impossible. As you said, how do we hold somebody accountable to something that they weren't clear on and never agreed to in the first place? And the number of times I've had this conversation with leaders in the last month is why we're having this conversation on the podcast.
Right, 100%. I mean, the number of times leaders will complain about team members, which is normal.
Yeah.
And then we ask a bunch of follow-up questions only to learn, like, hey, have you communicated this? Because it starts out with, this person isn't performing well, they're not hitting the mark, they're difficult, they're whatever. I say, okay, well, I appreciate that. So have you communicated your expectations to this person? Well, I mean, they should just know that, right? This is a place of work. This is a business. It's just okay. Those are some assumptions. And I'm glad that you're clear about those, but have you communicated those expectations or assumptions to this individual? No. Okay, well then how can you hold them accountable for something you haven't communicated? I don't know. I hadn't thought about it that way.
That's right.
Which is, and by the way, again, I've already mentioned, my marriage. I'm sure Don, you experienced this in marriage, but this is just in all relational partnerships of life.
Yeah.
We have two different people or multiple parties coming together, and we're all going to have a different set of expectations and assumptions. And so we need to clarify those and align ourselves. That's the most important thing. But here, let's dive a little deeper, because I think this conversation on assumptions can get lost and I think that we assume that by expectations, we're talking about what we expect people to deliver on.
Yeah.
Right.
Frequently, that is what we mean when we talk about
this. But there's another part of expectations that have to be communicated and clarified that most people don't think about.
That's right.
Right. So when we're taking people through a process of understanding culture, we've often talked about how the easiest way to understand culture is, this is how we do it. This is how we do it. Right. Montel Jordan, that song, right? The prevailing attitudes and behaviors that people show up with or operate with, that's what creates culture. And so when we're talking about setting expectations, or what we like to call a radical minimum standard, right? Mm-hmm. And by the way, people can go back to, I think, season 1, we have a whole episode around what we call the RMS, or radical minimum standard diagram. People often fail to see that a radical minimum standard is really comprised of two elements. The what we expect people to deliver on, what I expect you to do, the task, the responsibility, the thing that we want you to produce. But there's also this second layer, the how.
That's right.
How we expect people to perform, how we expect people to communicate, how we expect people to show up, right? Mm-hmm. And so this is not just about behaviors in terms of delivering on a particular assignment, but it's also about their behaviors in terms of how they engage with the people around them. And these are both equally important. The right. What is the outcome, what actually needs to get done. The how is how we do it here in this place.
That's right.
In our company, in our team. Right? Because, how we do anything, write an email, respond to a text, how we, communicate disagreement, how we resolve conflict, how we make decisions together, how we collaborate on a project, right? Those might be different amongst different cultures and contexts. I like to say that every team, every organization has its own personality, as it were, its own culture. But it's so important that we remember that the how is as important as the what, and very often it's the how that undermines the what. Most of the problems that you and I encounter with the clients we work with is not always just the what. Nope. Right? People are competent, they're good at their job, or they're at least capable. It's how they show up, how they engage with the team, how they resolve conflict, how they communicate frustration or disagreement, that more often than not undermines the what. Did you want to jump in there?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to add that, and that is the space that people, especially like the HR departments that are listening to this, get stuck, because they have a person that technically is checking the boxes of their job description. However, they're operating below the radical minimum standard of what we expect from a character chemistry standard on our team. Yeah. Right? We all have had experiences of people who are decent enough at their job, but they're freaking toxic, and it makes them impossible to work with. It creates all sorts of disruptions on the team. And yet leaders feel stuck because, well, technically they're doing their job, but that's because the how was never clarified. And even if there was some foggy understanding of the how, it wasn't elevated to the level of importance of the what.
Yes. I love that you're highlighting that. So yesterday, I woke up exhausted after watching the Dodgers in the World Series. I think it's game 3 in LA, go through 18 innings. It took them to get to the end of the game. And they finally win with a walk-off homer by Freddie Freeman. Exciting. It's fun. It's awesome. But here's what intrigued me. I'm on Instagram, and I see this clip of the manager of the Dodgers in the clubhouse after, celebrating with the team. And what's really interesting, we all know they are a highly competent set of individuals on that team,
Yeah.
right? And yet the thing that he celebrated, he didn't mention much of who did what. He spent most of the time in this clip talking about how they showed up, how they persevered, how they supported each other, how everything was really a celebration of the how.
Yeah.
So when people wonder about what it requires of us to build championship caliber programs, winning programs, successful programs in any industry, not just professional sports, is this, I tell people the how matters as much, if not more than the what.
That's right.
I would take B+ players, but put them in and help them develop A+ culture, and they will outperform an A team with a crappy culture every day in the long run. Maybe not one game, but over the long run, they will outperform. And so it's just a reminder to us, all of us as leaders, to this conversation around culture, or the how and the what of people's operation within our space, matters so much. It may not matter just in a moment, in one moment of execution, but over the long haul. Can we produce sustainable, exceptional results? And I think that's what we're fighting for here. So let me jump back in and continue this conversation on the what and the how. I think most teams miss on this because one of these, the what or the how, is fuzzy. Either it's fuzzy in us, we're not clear about it, or we've not communicated it clearly to our people. The leader might say what needs to happen, but not how. And so people fill in the blanks their own way.
Yeah.
Or they explain the how in detail, but never define what needs to get done, right? What that means, right? So this is really interesting, because when you get the older generations, because we have a huge gap developing in the workforce, right? We have millennials, Gen Z folks who are now the base of the workforce in North America, at least, and probably, I guess, in every part of the world. And then you've got, the boomers and Gen Xers who are kind of still in power, but we'll be done soon enough. But you get this huge gap of expectation, right? The older generations, it's like, this is what we expect you to do when you show up. This is what we need you to deliver on. Here are your metrics. Here are your measurables. Here are your goals. Here are the outcomes. It's very what oriented. And the younger generations are kind of going, wait, hold on. But how you speak to me when I show up to the office, how you invest in me, how you view me, how you value me, how. It's so incredibly important.
Yes.
And I think sometimes if we're not careful, we'll lean in one direction or another, but really this is a both and conversation. So clarity comes from connecting these two pieces, the what and the how, in a way that's consistent, repeatable, and I love this, human. And that's not a one-time announcement. It's a rhythm.
That's right.
Right. It's built on how you give feedback, how you review work, how you celebrate wins. Over time, those conversations become your culture, exactly the same way I'm referring to this clip of the Dodgers clubhouse, and the manager is celebrating not just what they did. They performed well at a high level, pardon me, very competently. But what he was celebrating, what really impressed him, was how they operated in unity, in unison as a team. That's right. I know that there's a story you're going to share in just a few minutes that we'll come back to.
Yes, that's right. But one thing as I've been discussing this with clients lately, a way I've been describing it is the what is, as you said, what's expected, what needs to get done. But the how is helping them understand the quality, the texture, the feel of that thing being done in and by our team. And as you said, every team has its own personality. And when we aren't clear on what the texture, the quality of those done assignments are, then our teams are not going to be aligned. So this conversation is so crucial for us leaders to have front of mind when we are thinking about creating teams that are rowing together, creating teams that are aligned and functioning well.
Yeah. So let me pause here, because I think sometimes we as a business, as a coaching business, sometimes struggle to communicate what exactly it is that we're fighting for. I think we know internally, we know intuitively,
Mhm.
But we've created this thing we call a leadership operating system, right? Which is comprised of 8 core leadership tools that really represent the 8 key competencies, capacities that
Yes.
we all need to grow and develop in to elevate, to unlock our leadership potential.
Yeah.
Pardon me. And not just individually, but then when we can do this together as a team, right? So what's amazing is, I've said this before, you can put all the best athletes on the court, on the field, on the ice rink, on the whatever sport we're playing here. But if they don't know how to operate well together, then
right.
you will get a mixed bag of results.
Mhm.
And having worked with a number of professional sports franchises in different sporting fields, I can say I've seen this across the board.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. If it's a team sport, this is what you find. And so what we're desperately trying to do with this leadership operating system is to provide people that shared language, the shared playbook,
Yeah.
right? A set of guiding principles and practices that regardless of what context or industry we're in, if we would all agree that these are the expectations we want to hold ourselves and one another to,
Mhm.
will undoubtedly, most assuredly, unlock more of the full potential of that group or
That's
unit,
right.
team, organization, tribe, franchise, whatever.
That's right.
Right. And that's really the power of this leadership operating system, is because we've talked about this. Life, leadership, business is pressure. Things are changing at a mile a minute. We cannot keep up with every new change that
No.
hits us, especially now with the advancements in technology. But every single new challenge, what does it do? It freaks us out. It represents, oh my gosh, it's a whole other problem that we're going to have to solve from scratch.
Mhm.
And yet, one of the most powerful assets of this leadership operating system is it provides for us a way,
Mhm.
not just the what, but the how, a way of operating that doesn't just help us solve one problem, but helps us solve 1,000 problems,
Yeah.
right? Because what we do is we begin to understand that we may have 1,000 problems, but there's really only about 3 to 5 problems that all of those represent at the end
Yeah.
of the day.
That's
Right.
right.
And so I want to push that, because I want our listeners to understand that one of the tools in our toolkit is incredibly powerful by itself. They all stand alone.
Mhm.
But when we put them together, and then when we as individuals, but then more as teams,
That's right.
willing to align ourselves with the expectations reflected in these tools, now all of a sudden you have however many people you need rowing in the same direction. You have exponentially greater authority, power, and you will have greater breakthroughs and greater victories. It's just one of those things where I just want to say that, because every once in a while I'm like, man, we got to get this operating system into the hands of more people. But for that to happen, we need people to understand why this matters and what it's going to do for them. So anyways, I know it's a little, I just kind of a little side note, but I wanted to.
No, it's good. I mean, to bring it back though, to tie it back to this conversation directly, our operating system that we help leaders implement can be the how. So if you are struggling, like maybe you have a lot of clarity on what your organization does, but you're like constantly running into this sense of misalignment or frustration or missed expectations, the operating system helps you define your how.
I love that. You know what? We're the how-to business.
Yeah.
We're not the what business, right? Because every industry is different. This is why we have the privilege of working across all these different industries and different levels of leadership. But really, we are the how. We are the how people.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's always the how that undermines the what.
It is. It
right?
is.
I mean, marriages don't fall apart because of the what. They fall apart because of the how we have conversation, how we engage conflict, how we do this, how we do that, right? It's the how that undermines the what. We are the how business. That's it. That's our, just spread the word, tell our listeners, tell everybody, we're the how people.
So let me share, on that note, let me share a story from a client recently that is dealing with this directly. So one of our clients has built an incredibly high achieving sales team, which sales often is a solo sport, right? It's like, how much can I sell? How much can I make, right? And this leader that we have the privilege of working with firmly, because of their own journey, has a high value for bringing all of these high achieving people into a team, because this leader believes really to her core that they can accomplish more as a team than they can on their own.
Love it.
Which definitely totally aligns with our philosophies, right? And she also is so committed to providing all sorts of supports, coaching, back-end support, all sorts of things for the people on the team, all of these really high achieving salespeople. And yet she recently has been running into constant frustration, not because they're not meeting their dollar goals, right? Not because they're not meeting their business goals, but because because of the way that they're getting there. It's because of this how conversation. And so what I have been working with her to help her understand.
Real quick, before you go into that, maybe give us just a little bit of okay, well, so what's the difference? They're operating in a way that she doesn't feel like is maybe team oriented, and what is that producing that she's unhappy with?
Yeah, I would say it's coming out in a variety of ways. It's coming out in deals being made that maybe over benefit the salesperson to the detriment of the team. It's coming out in people not showing up to team functions because they're busy building their own sales revenue. It looks like people being frustrated or feeling like they're held back by the team instead of seeing the benefits of what working on a team is actually affording them.
Yeah.
So those are some of the ways that it's coming out.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
But it's just kind of pervasive that because this expectation, this assumption, this obviously for her is so deeply ingrained that team matters, team is important. Anytime she sees these things popping up, it's like poking a bruise, right? And she assumes, the assumption that then gets made is like, well, they don't understand the value of the team. Yeah. And so where we've kind of been digging lately is maybe they don't understand the value of the team, but have you communicated how operating on your team looks and feels like? What does it mean to be in this team? What are the qualities? What are the textures? What does it feel like? And is this a conversation that you're having over and over again, at least as often as you're talking about the what of how you're of selling your product, right? And the reality is no. And I would say even the greater reality that she is wrestling with is she doesn't even know, she hasn't clearly defined for herself the how, this how aspect of team for her, right? Here's the quality, here's some markers, some benchmarks of team, right? They've done that for their sales. Here's the quality of sales. Here's some benchmarks for what our sales goals are going to look like. Here's how you meet these sales goals, right? The very practical skills. But then she has team members that are being rude to other people on the infrastructure team. Yeah. She has team members that are frustrated by having to come to these all team meetings or devaluing them, right? And I'm like, I totally get this because you care about this so much. However, I don't think you have communicated it clearly for how much you care about it.
Yes. Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think all of us are guilty of this. We talked about this already, but I think it's worth kind of highlighting again that very often, for us as people, we have these kind of internal core values, but more often than not, we're not even aware of what they are.
Yeah.
We only know what they are when, we feel like our toes get stepped on and we're like, wait, well, hold on. Why are you doing it that way? Right. That feels out of alignment with what I've expected. And so if we don't do the work, which I love that you're doing this with that client, which is helping them kind of bring from the unconscious level into the conscious realm, an articulation of the how of working as a team. And not only that, but the why does it matter so much?
Mhm.
Right. So, I mean, that we're not going to get into the why today. It's a whole other conversation on providing clear vision and what it is that we're fighting for
right.
down the road. But I think we can throw it in just for a moment here to say, when we're dealing with a group of people, most of us focus on the what.
Yeah.
What are the metrics, measurables, results that we want to see? Very often we assume the how.
Mhm.
We assume people will show up and operate in a particular way that takes everybody else's best interest into consideration.
Yeah.
Right. And then thirdly, the why. Why are we operating this way? Why are we sacrificing this way? Why are we showing
Why
up?
does this matter? Yeah.
Why does this matter? Like ultimately, long term, what is this going to
Mhm.
do for us? And so I love what you're saying that as leaders, we've got to fight um, to unearth those things inside of ourselves. And again, I think what you said earlier is really powerful. That for the most part, the clients we work with, they're so grateful that our tools communicate very clearly a framework of this is how we do it.
Mhm.
This is how we do it. This is how we show up. This is how we do sales. This is how we do team. This is how we do meetings. This is how we do conflict. This is how we do collaboration. This is the how, right?
Yeah.
Because then they're not having to reinvent the wheel. And what's interesting too, and this just for our listeners is kind of fun. And I'd invite our listeners into this challenge. Whenever we start working with clients, we always say the same thing. Hey, listen, you're all coming from different backgrounds, different places, different views, different whatever. If any of the tools that we introduce you to fail to reflect the quality of leader and the quality of culture that you want in your team or organization,
Yeah.
we give you full permission to throw that tool out the window.
Mhm.
And to date, never once, not by any human being that we've worked with, has
Right.
anybody ever said, nope, this does not reflect the quality of person or leader or culture or organization
Yeah.
that we want to fight for. And so
Yeah.
we just provide them this locked and loaded how-to system that when people as individuals and teams embrace it and align themselves with it,
Yeah.
literally, it has this incredible transformative effect.
Let me add one more
Do it.
reason that the how matters. If we are clear on our how, it also moves upstream to inform our hiring and promotion decisions.
Yep.
If we're not clear on the how, we keep bringing people onto the team for the what. Well, they're great salespeople. Well, they're great communicators. Well, they're great, whatever it is, right? Whatever that job description is, they're great at it. They have the competency. So we bring them on the team or we promote them. If we are clear on our how, then we can start to solve some of these problems from the very beginning, because we are not bringing people onto our team that aren't clear about the how and are not also in agreement with the how.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So when we say, hey, we have a high functioning sales team, we'd love to invite you on. One of the ways that we continue to be the best in our industry is because we have this high core value of operating as a team. Here's what that means. Here's how that plays out for us. Now people get to self-select. Oh, that's actually not my favorite way of operating. Great.
Yeah.
You're not a fit.
I love it. That's so good. That's so good. So let me share another story from a different perspective. Working with this company who decided it was time to upgrade their business system.
Mm-hmm.
Which anybody out there, as soon as I said that, there are people who literally broke out in hives and started feeling anxiety because you've either been through this or you're going through this. And we all know that the bigger an organization is, the more challenging it is to introduce a whole new business system, because there has to be training. There has to, all the information and content has to be transferred over. And inevitably there are going to be a million and one difficulties, challenges, snafus that are going to arise. So, this particular leader of this organization, they've got, hundreds of employees that all have to transition to this new system. And they set a date that they're going to launch a new system. That got delayed, I think, 4 different times.
3 or 4 times.
Because everyone's just like, oh my gosh, the business is going to blow up. We're not going to make it to this. So long story short, they had this huge, big summertime party this last summer for the whole organization. Invited him in, and this leader got up there and did the most amazing job of communicating what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
We are transitioning to a new business system that is going to help this company go to a whole new level of operation and scalability and success. why we're doing this, because it's going to allow us to communicate more effectively, and we're going to have less drop the ball. And, it's so streamlined, and we're going to have reports, just at the tip of your fingers at all times. And, it's going to make life so much better. And everybody was ready to go for it. Everybody was excited. Everybody's cheering. Let's go. So he communicated the what and the why incredibly well.
Yeah.
So they launched the new business system, and as is expected, 1,000,001 challenges like day one.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Pandemonium. And so people are freaking out and people are struggling. And so about 3 or 4 weeks into this, I'm meeting with the executive team. I said, how's this going? Let's talk about it. And they're like, Eric, we don't know what to do. I mean, people are losing their crap over this. They're pulling their hair out. I mean, everybody's blaming each other, throwing everybody on the bus. Why did we do this? This is the dumbest decision ever. Is it too late to go back to the old? Right. And so I just said, okay, well, hey, help me understand. Because at this point, I didn't really know what the leader had done.
Yeah.
And the leader says, oh, well, we had this big part. I said, how did you prepare everybody for this? Oh, we had this big party and we told them this is what we're doing. This is why it's going to benefit everybody. Let's go take the hill. And I said, okay, did you communicate anything by way of like how we're going to navigate the inevitable challenges that will come up?
Right.
What's amazing is like, when you take a group like the military.
Yeah.
These soldiers are literally trained in preparation for every possible thing that could go wrong on the battlefield. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter whether they're foot soldiers on the ground with guns taking the trenches, or whether these are people that are on the technology side or on the transportation. These people prepare. How are we going to respond when the inevitable happens, which is shit's going to go sideways, stuff's not going to go right.
Yeah.
Right. Plan A, plan B, plan C is going to fall through. What do we do now? And I said, have you and I said, no, we hadn't thought of that. And I said, okay, well, that's a good thing to think about, because you give them the what and the why. You've not given them a clear how. Like, how do we handle the challenges? How do we communicate? What is the reporting structure? How do we solve these problems? How do we email and communicate in non-passive aggressive, blame, language? Like, how do we show up in very difficult, turbulent times? And he said, I had never thought of that. I said, well, buddy, listen, this is what we've been training the executive team in, is these simple how tools. So what are the 3 or 4 or 5 key things that you guys together have learned from this leadership operating system, the how-to toolkit, that you can share with your organization that would encourage, oh yeah, wow, I know when we learned what a kairos is and how we handle kairos, and we learned about D2 and the pit and what we need to do in that. And I said, yes, now take those, communicate those out to the rest of your organization. Just give them 3, 4, 5 at most, right? Simple, practical. This is how we show up when stuff goes sideways.
That's right.
And what's amazing is literally within a few weeks, I said, and you got to tell them over and over, and you got to send out multiple communications. And this is what we all want to align ourselves with. These are the expectations. And within a few short weeks, literally, it's not like the problems went away, but they were no longer compounding the problems because of the way that they were dealing with each other.
Yeah. Because
let's be honest, you and I know this, like, marriage is full of problems, but the real problem is not the problems. It's how we handle the problems, how we engage with each other in those problems that makes everything so volatile.
That's right. Yeah. Whew. Okay. So what do we do? Give us some marching orders this week, Eric.
Yeah. It's just a practical handle on how we engage this. So I want our listeners to just think about this. It's a simple little exercise. Just pick one area of your life where you're working in some way, shape, or form with another human being, and where you feel like there might be some disconnect between what you're wanting from that individual and what it is that they're delivering on.
Right.
Right. And I don't care what it is, whether in workplace, personal, doesn't matter. Maybe this is a project that keeps missing the mark, or a person that you feel some tension with. And then simply ask this question: Is it possible that this isn't a competence? It might be a competence gap for that individual, but is it possible that there's a communication gap, right? That there are expectations that we are not clear on, we've not communicated clearly, or that we don't have agreement on. I would encourage our listeners to simply take some time and to write down in a journal on a piece of paper, to articulate what is it that you are wanting from this individual, the what of the expectation, and then write down the how. How you expect them to deliver on that. What is the attitude? What is the temperament? What is the language? What is the tone of voice? What is the whatever, the texture?
Yeah.
Right. The feel of what you're looking for. Because I can walk in and my wife say, "Hi, babe," in two different ways, and I have two different experiences. One is, "Hi, babe." The other one is, "Hi, babe." So my wife and I have actually had to have these conversations. Hey, when we walk back into a home, if somebody's home and somebody else from our family walks into the home,
how
we want to expect of how we will be greeted.
That's right.
And it's not just the what, like, "Hey, babe," or "Hey, son," or "Hey, daughter," or "Sweetheart," whatever. It is also the texture, the feel, the experience. Like, I'm going to stop what I'm doing. I'm going to turn away from the TV, look at that human being. I'm going to make eye contact. I'm going to say, "Hey, how are you? Good to see you." I'm going to pause doing the dishes. I'm going to pause from whatever I'm doing in the kitchen, making dinner. I'm going to whatever, right? How do we want that person to operate in that moment?
That's
right. And so that's the what and the how. And then I think we need to consider sitting with that individual and saying, "Hey, maybe I've not communicated this clearly to you, but I'd love an opportunity to share with you what I'm looking for as you're delivering on X, Y, or Z. Let me share with you the what and the how. Does that make sense to you? Is that something that we can agree on together?" And if that literally, so many of our frustrations would be resolved on if we just practiced it more. But we're sitting around waiting for the other person to magically change the way they're showing up and operating.
Yeah.
When all the while we're the ones who have not done the hard work of clarifying for ourselves and the other party what we expect.
That's right. And this is how we create alignment, ownership.
Yeah.
When we find clarity and agreement on the what and the how of our lives, our families, our businesses, that's when we stop making these silent contracts. That's when we stop getting unnecessarily and unfairly frustrated with the people in our lives, and we actually start to see movement, positive progress.
Yeah.
But it takes some time. It takes some intentionality. It takes starting with us, getting that clarity, and then communicating it not once, but over and over and over again.
There's a saying in the world of carpentry: measure twice, cut once.
That's right.
Measure twice, cut once. Take the time to measure twice, to clarify for ourselves and others the expectations that we're operating with, and so that we save a lot of time and energy in that way. All right. If this episode hits close to home, which I'm assuming it does because it hits close to home for us, we want to encourage you, our sweet, lovely listeners, to share this episode with another leader who might be stuck in these silent contracts and the consequences that come from those. The truth is, we've all been there, frustrated by gaps we never meant to create. And what matters most is how we close those gaps. That's through right. Clarity and communication.
And if you are a MPWR Podcast listener and you are looking for more, we have created this monthly virtual masterclass really just with this podcast community in mind. I mean, we're going to invite, we open it up to other people in our community, but we really sat down to say, what is the next practical step we would love to move our podcast listeners into so that they can start to implement this how-to system, this leadership operating system.
Yeah.
So we're doing these monthly masterclasses. Head to mpwrcoaching.com/masterclass to see and sign up for the next session. That link will also be in the show notes, but we would love to see you there. We are so excited about moving this virtual kind of to us faceless community into a real space that we can connect and pour into you guys in real ways.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, Don. I just want to speak to our listeners for just a hot second. First of all, this podcast has grown well beyond our wildest imagination.
Yes.
We have tens and tens and tens and tens and tens and tens of thousands of subscribers now in just 4 or 5 months since we launched this podcast. we never could have expected this. Like
No.
you listeners, you who are listening to this are people that we are so grateful to serve. And we're assuming that because it continues to grow week over week, that what we're sharing in this podcast is somehow helping you unlock more of your potential and your leadership in every area of your life. We're so grateful for that, but we also want to figure out how do we serve you more effectively. So these masterclasses, literally, we designed these with you in mind. Like, let's take the conversation deeper. Let's create a space where we can see each other's faces. Let's create room for you to ask questions and to dialogue. Let's get to know each other. I mean, let's be honest. I don't think I even know 10 people here in San Diego. And we've got tens and tens and tens and tens and tens of thousands of subscribers and listeners all over the world. And so we want to serve you. We want to connect with you. You are our tribe. You are our tribe. We're not your tribe. You're our tribe. You've invited us into your world, into your business, into your life. We take that seriously, and we want to serve you more effectively. So next week, without further ado, next week, we're going to be talking about how to take those breakthrough moments, which we love, and how to turn them into real lasting change in your leadership. Because too often we have these powerful experiences that end up just kind of fading away, and we don't know how to leverage them. So next week, how do we leverage our breakthroughs for lasting change and transformation? We'll see you then. Till next time.